Dasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesh Ashata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gau Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna 13th chapter पे है हम. कुछ है पता? So हम 13th chapter के आखिरी 3 श्लोकों पर हैं. 33rd श्लोक से स्टार्ट करना है. So यथा सर्वागतम शौक्ष्म्यात् आकाशं नोपलीप्यते सर्वत्रावस्थितो देहे तथात्मानोपलिप्यते. The sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything. All that is all pervading. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahman vision does not mix with the body, those situated in that body. Hare Krishna. Purport. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Text number 33. The air enters into water, mud, stool, and whatever else is there. Still, it does not mix with anything. Similarly, the living entity, even though situated in varieties of bodies, is aloof from them due to its subtle nature. Therefore, it is impossible to see with the material eyes how the living entity is in contact with this body and how he is out of it after the destruction of the body. No one in science can ascertain this. Hare Krishna. So, we are in the 13th chapter, concluding verses. And in the last few verses, the discussion is largely about Purusha and Prakriti. And this is what has been the discussion. And here, now the discussion is happening about, who can see the truth. For example, text number 31 translation. When a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, and he sees how beings are expanded everywhere, he attains to the Brahman conception. Like that. So that's what the discussion is going on here about the vision of such a person. Now, text number 34. Yatha prakashyate eka krishnam lokam imam ravihi kshetram kshetri tatha krishnam prakashyati bharata. O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. All right. Purport. Just like the universe is compared to the body, whereas the sun illuminates the universe, similarly, the soul illuminates the body. That's the point here. Purport. There are various theories regarding consciousness. Here in Bhagavad Gita, the example of the sun and sunshine is given. As the sun is situated in one place, but is illuminating the whole universe, so a small particle of spirit soul, although situated in the heart of this body, is illuminating the whole body by consciousness. Thus, consciousness is a proof of the presence of the soul, as sunshine or light is a proof of the presence of the sun. When the soul is present in the body, there is consciousness all over the body. And as soon as the soul has passed from the body, there is no more consciousness. This can be easily understood by any intelligent man. Therefore, consciousness is not a product of the combinations of matter. It is the symptom of the living entity. The consciousness of the living entity, although qualitatively one with the Supreme Consciousness, is not supreme, because the consciousness of one particular body does not share that of another body. But the super soul, which is situated in all bodies as a friend of the individual soul, is conscious of all body. That is the difference between supreme consciousness and the individual consciousness. And now we come to the final concluding verse of the 13th chapter, where 4 questions were asked by Arjuna. Kshetra Kshetrajna Jnanam Greyam Purusha Prakriti. Text number 35. Kshetra Kshetrajnanayorevam Antaram Jnana Chakshusha Bhuta Prakriti Moksham Cha Ye Viduryanti Te Param. Those who see with eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the knower of the body, Kshetra Kshetrajna, can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature, attain to the supreme goal. Hare Krishna. So, Krishna Chandra Prabhu, we're going to start with. Let's read the purport.
The purport of this 13th chapter is that one should know the distinction between the body, the owner of the body, and the super soul. One should recognize the process of liberation as described in verses 8 through 12. Then one can go on to the supreme destination. A faithful person should at first have some good association to hear of God, and thus gradually become enlightened. If one accepts a spiritual master, one can learn to distinguish between matter and spirit, and that becomes the stepping stone for further spiritual realization. A spiritual master, by various instructions, teaches his student to get free from the material concept of life. For instance, in Bhagavad Gita, we find Krishna instructing Arjuna to free him from materialistic considerations. One can understand that this body is matter. It can be analyzed with its 24 elements. The body is the gross manifestation, and the subtle manifestation is the mind and psychological effects. And the symptoms of life are the interaction of these features. But over and above this, there is the soul, and there is also the super soul. The soul and the super soul are two. This material world is working by the conjunction of the soul and the 24 elements. One who can see the constitution of the whole material manifestation as this combination of the soul and material elements, and can also see the situation of the Supreme Soul, becomes eligible for transfer to the spiritual world. These things are meant for contemplation and for realization, and one should have a complete understanding of this chapter with the help of the spiritual master. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport, so the 13th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of nature, the enjoyer, and consciousness.
Hare Krishna. So with this, we conclude the 13th chapter. Let's begin our journey with the 14th chapter. It's a small chapter where the foundation is laid for the modes of material nature. The 14th chapter, titled as the 3 modes of material nature, has 27 verses, where in the first, you can say, let's say the first 9 verses, introduction is set, Aham Bij Pratapita, like that. So other important verses comes here, where Krishna says, I impregnate the Prakriti, by which the creation happens, etc., etc. Then along with that, the basic conditionings of the modes of material nature are described. What is mode of goodness means, what is mode of passion, what is mode of ignorance means. And then from verse number 10 to 18, the characteristics of, in different ways, like what kind of an action is performed in goodness, passion, ignorance, what is the destination of the person who lives his life in goodness, passion, and ignorance, like that. And then finally, the last set of verses, the 9 verses, talks about how to transcend these modes of material nature. So a very, very interesting chapter. Let's take a look and begin with it. Chapter number 14, text number 1. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Parambhuya Pravakshyami Jnananam Jnanamuttamam Yajñatva Munahi Sarve Param Siddhamito Gataha. Now, as chapter by chapter, Krishna keeps on saying, now I'm going to tell you more confidential, higher supreme truths, like that. Krishna says, Param Bhuya Pravakshyami. Bhuya means again, Pravakshyami, मैं फिर बोलूंगा. अब देखो यहाँ अर्जुन ने प्रश्न नहीं उठाया है. Let me again enlighten you. On what? Param subject matter, transcendental. Jnananam Jnanam Uttamam. This is said to be the knowledge of all knowledge, and it's the supreme. Yajñatvamanaya sarve, knowing which param siddhimito you attain or you reach to the highest destination. Puppet. Nikhil Prabhu, go ahead, read the puppet.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanar Pranam.
Downwards.
From the 7th chapter to the end of the 12th chapter, Sri Krishna in detail reveals the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now the Lord himself is further enlightening Arjun. If one understands this chapter through the process of philosophical speculation, he will come to an understanding of devotional service. In the 13th chapter, it was clearly explained that by humbly developing knowledge, one may possibly be freed from material entanglement. It has also been explained that it is due to association with the modes of nature that the living entity is entangled in this material world. Now, in this chapter, the Supreme Personality explains that what those modes of nature are, how they act, how they bind, and how they give liberation. The knowledge explained in this chapter is proclaimed by the Supreme Lord to be superior to the knowledge given so far in the other chapters. By understanding this knowledge, various great sages attained perfection and transfer to the spiritual world. The Lord now explains the same knowledge in a better way. This knowledge is far, far superior to all other processes of knowledge, thus far explained, and knowing this many attain perfection. Thus it is expected that one who understands this 14th chapter will attain perfection. Hare Krishna.
So what will be the result of this knowledge? Idam jnanam upashritya mama sadharmayam agataha sargapi nopajayante pralayena vayanti cha. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. All right, puppet. After acquiring perfect transcendental knowledge, one acquires qualitative equality with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, becoming free from the repetition of birth and death. One does not, however, lose his identity as an individual soul. It is understood from Vedic literature that the liberated souls who have reached the transcendental planets of the spiritual sky always look to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, being engaged in his transcendental loving service. So, even after liberation, the devotees do not lose their individual identities. Madharanjana, continue. Unmute yourself. Yes,
Hare
read the second
Krishna.
paragraph.
Generally, in the material world, whatever knowledge we get is contaminated by the three modes of material nature. Knowledge which is not contaminated by the three modes of nature is called transcendental knowledge. As soon as one is situated in that transcendental knowledge, he is on the same platform as the Supreme Person. Those who have no knowledge of the spiritual sky hold that after being freed from the material activities of the material form, this spiritual identity becomes formless without any variegatedness. However, just as there is material variegatedness in this world, in the spiritual world there is also variegatedness. Those in ignorance of this think that spiritual existence is exposed to material variety. But actually, in the spiritual sky, one attains a spiritual form. There are spiritual activities, and the spiritual situation is called devotional life. That atmosphere is said to be uncontaminated, and there one is equal in quality with the Supreme Lord. To obtain such knowledge, one must develop all the spiritual qualities. One who thus develops the spiritual qualities is not affected either by the creation or by the destruction of the material world. Hare Krishna.
So how does the creation happens? Mama yone mahad brahma tasmin garvam dadamiham sambhava sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata. Mama yoni mahad brahma. Mahad brahma is, you can consider as mahat tattva for that reason, the total material existence. Mama yoni, yoni, the source. Yoni is the garbha, right? That's what it's called. No, not the yoni. That's not the yoni, right? Anyways, Mama Yoni, source of birth, Tasmin Garbham Dadamiham. So I impregnate. Tasmin Garbham Dadamiham. I, Garbha, pregnancy. Sambhava Sarvabhutanam, of all living entities, Tato Bhavati Bharata. Thereafter, the creation takes place, which means Lord Shri Krishna is saying he impregnates the material nature with all living entities. And that's how the creation takes place. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the birth of all living entities, O son of Bharata. So, who is our original father? Krishna, because he impregnates, even if from this perspective, just to see from where our journey began. Puppet, this is an explanation of the world. Everything takes place is due to the combination Kshetra and Kshetrajna, the body and the spirit soul. This combination of material nature and the living entities is made possible by the Supreme God Himself. The Mahat Tattva is the total cause of the total cosmic manifestation, the total substance of the material cause, in which there are three modes of material nature, is sometimes called Brahman. The Supreme Personality impregnates that total substance, and thus innumerable universes becomes possible. This total material substance, the Mahat Tattva, is described as Brahman in the Vedic literature. Tasmadi tad Brahma namarupam annam cha jayati. The Supreme Person impregnates the Brahman with the seeds of the living entities. The 24 elements, beginning from earth, water, fire, air, and all material energy, they constitute what is called Mahat Brahma, or the great Brahman, the material nature, as explained in the 7th chapter. Beyond this, there is another superior nature, the living entity. Into material nature, the superior nature is mixed by the will of the Supreme Personality Godhead, and therefore all living entities are born of this material nature. Mother Priyanka, read the last paragraph. Go ahead, you are unmuted.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The scorpion lays its eggs in the pile of rice, and sometimes it is said that the scorpion is born out of rice. But the rice is not the cause of the scorpion. Actually, the eggs were laid by the mother. Similarly, material nature is not the cause of the birth of the living entities. The seed is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they only seem to come out as products of material nature. Thus, every living entity, according to its past activities, has a different body created by this material nature so that the entity can enjoy or suffer according to his past deeds. The Lord is the cause of all the manifestations of the living entities in this material world. Hare Krishna.
All right, a very important stroke now. Text number 4. Sarva yoni shukanteya murtaya sambhavanteya tasam brahmahadayone aham bij prataha pitaha. More or less the same thing. I impregnate the material nature. Tasman garbham dadamyam. Text number 3. Right? And now here Krishna says aham bij prataha pitaha. So who impregnated that Prakriti? I, because I sowed the seed. That's the point. It should be understood that all species of life, as Anukunti, are made possible by birth in this material world, and that I am the seed-giving Father. Mother Sadhya Vilasini, please read. Unmute. Yes.
In this verse, it is clearly explained that the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is the original father of all living entities. The living entities are combinations of the material nature and the spiritual nature. Such living entities are seen not only on this planet, but on every planet, even on the highest, where Brahma is situated. Everywhere there are living entities. Within the earth, there are living entities, even within water and within fire. All these appearances are due to the mother, material nature, and Krishna's seed giving process. The purport is that the material world is impregnated with living entities who come out in various forms at the time of creation according to their past deeds. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So creation have happened, the impregnation has happened, and now Krishna talks about what is this material world comprises of. Text number 5. Sattvam rajastama iti guna prakriti sambhava nivannanti mahabaho dehe dehe namavyayam. Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty Amrajana, he becomes conditioned by these modes. Mother Sonam, go ahead, read the puppet.
Hare Krishna Babuji, Dandvat Pranam. The living entity, because he is transcendental, has nothing to do with this material nature. Still, because he has become conditioned by the material world, he is acting under the spell of the three modes of material nature. Because living entities have different kinds of bodies, in terms of the different aspects of nature, they are induced to act according to that nature. That this is the cause of the varieties of happiness and distress. Hare
All
Krishna.
right. So there are three modes: goodness, passion, ignorance. So now the discussion begins. What are the qualities of these respective modes? Text number 6 speaks about the quality of mode of goodness, characteristics rather. Tatra sattvam nirmalatva prakashkam anamayam sukha sangena badnati jnana sangena chanaya. O sinless one, anagaha. The mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. Mother Sangeeta, read the puppet.
Hare Krishna
Hare-
Prabhuji, Dandavat
Yes.
Pranam. The living entities conditioned by material nature are of various types. One is happy, another is very active, and another is helpless. All these types of psychological manifestations are causes of the entities' conditioned status in nature. How they are differently conditioned is explained in this section of Bhagavad Gita. The mode of goodness is first considered. The effect of developing the mode of goodness in the material world is that one becomes wiser than those otherwise conditioned. A man in the mode of goodness is not so much affected by material miseries, and he has a sense of advancement in material knowledge. The representative type is the Brahmana, who is supposed to be situated in the mode of goodness. This sense of happiness is due to understanding that in the mode of goodness, one is more or less free from sinful reactions. Actually, in the Vedic literature, it is said that the mode of goodness means greater knowledge and a greater sense of happiness. The difficulty here is that when a living entity is situated in the mode of goodness, he becomes conditioned to feel that he is advanced in knowledge and is better than others. In this way, he becomes conditioned. The best examples are the scientist and the philosopher. Each is very proud of his knowledge, and because they generally improve their living conditions, they feel a sort of material happiness. This sense of advanced happiness is conditioned life, makes them bound by the mode of goodness of material nature. As such, they are attracted toward working in the mode of goodness, and as long as they have an attraction for working in that way, they have to take some type of body in the modes of nature. Thus, there is no likelihood of liberation or of being transferred to the spiritual world. Repeatedly, one may become a philosopher, a scientist, or a poet, and repeatedly become entangled in the same disadvantages of birth and death. But due to the illusion of the material energy, one thinks that that sort of life is pleasant.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We'll discuss about it maybe tomorrow. We'll just a little bit read out what is the subject matter here. So mode of goodness is being introduced. Ahead we'll have mode of passion and mode of ignorance being introduced slightly. Let's take a look at mode of passion. Text number 7. Rajo ragatmakam vidhi trishna sanga samudbhavam tannibadnati kaunteya karma sangena dehinam. Highly, they have a very strong fruitive mentality. Trishna is strong hankering, like that. So, ragatmakam, born of desire or lust. The mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings. O son of Kunti, because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material for actions. I know why, otherwise, somebody has so many desires, definitely he'll engage in furtive activities because he wants to fulfill those desires. Otherwise, why would he have it? So the puppet, Mother Medhavani, please read the puppet.
The mode of passion is characterized by the attraction between man and woman. Woman has attraction for man and man has attraction for woman. This is called the mode of passion. And when the mode of passion is increased, one develops the hankering for material enjoyment. He wants to enjoy sense gratification. For sense gratification, a man in the mode of passion wants some honor in society or in the nation, and he wants to have a happy family with nice children, wife, and house. These are the products of the mode of passion. As long as one is hankering after these things, he has to work very hard. Therefore, it is clearly stated here that he becomes associated with the fruits of his activities and thus becomes bound by such activities. In order to please his wife, children, and society, and to keep up his prestige, one has to work. Therefore, the whole material world is more or less in the mode of passion. Modern civilization is considered to be advanced in the standard of the mode of passion. Formerly, the advanced condition was considered to be in the mode of goodness. If there is no liberation for those in the mode of goodness, what to speak of those who are entangled in the mode of passion?
Hare Krishna. And let's take a last verse for today. What is mode of ignorance? Text number 8. Tamastu jnanajam vidhi mohanam savadena pramadalasya nidrave tannibadnati bharata. O son of Bharat, know that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The result of this mode are madness, indolence, sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. Hare Krishna. Ravi, are you there? Yes, Ravi Bhodka, go ahead. Read out.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Purport. In this verse, the specific application of the word to is very significant. This means that the mode of ignorance is a very peculiar qualification of the embodied soul. The mode of ignorance is just the opposite of the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, by development of knowledge, one can understand what is what. But the mode of ignorance is just the opposite. Everyone under the spell of the mode of ignorance becomes mad, and a madman cannot understand what is what. Instead of making advancement, one becomes degraded. The definition of the mode of ignorance is stated in the Vedic literature, Vastu Yathatmaya Jnana Varakam Viparyaya Jnana Janakam Tamaham. Under the spell of ignorance, one cannot understand a thing as it is. For example, everyone can see that his grandfather has died and therefore he will also die. Man is mortal. The children that he conceives will also die. So death is sure. Still, people are madly accumulating money and working very hard all day and night, not caring for the eternal spirit. This is madness. In their madness, they are very reluctant to make advancement in spiritual understanding. Such people are very lazy. When they are invited to associate for spiritual understanding, they are not much interested. They are not even active like the man who is controlled by the mode of passion. Thus, another symptom of one embedded in the mode of ignorance is that he sleeps more than is required. 6 hours of sleep is sufficient, but a man in the mode of ignorance sleeps at least 10 or 12 hours a day. Such a man appears to be always dejected and is addicted to intoxicants and sleeping. These are symptoms of a person conditioned by the mode of ignorance. Hare Krishna.
And now Lord Shri Krishna summarizes these 3 modes. Just an introduction right now, but he just kind of does a recap what he has spoken. Text number 9. Sattvam sukhe sanjayati raja karmani bharata jnanam avratya tu tamaha pramade sanjayati yuta. O son of Bharat, the mode of goodness conditions us to happiness, passion conditions us to fruitive action, and ignorance covering one's knowledge binds one to madness. Purport. A person in the mode of goodness satisfied by his work or intellectual pursuit, just as a philosopher, scientist, or educator may be engaged in a particular field of knowledge and may be satisfied in that way. A man in the mode of passion may be engaged in fruitive activity. He owns as much as he can and spends for good causes. Sometimes tries to open hospitals, gives to charity institutions, etc. Designs the one in the mode of passion. And the mode of ignorance covers knowledge. In the mode of ignorance, whatever one does is good neither for him nor for anyone. Hare Krishna. Therefore, it is very important for devotees, as for practicing sadhakas, to become kind of steadfast and exhibit certain amount of continuity in their services. You would see this behavior or pattern among sadhakas also. Some devotees are too restless to remain consistent with any one service. They keep hopping from one service to another. And such personalities are those who keep moving from one service to another, who cannot maintain a project for that reason or continue with one service, are highly result oriented. They want to produce maximum result in a short time, and if the result is not there up to their expectation what they wanted, then they want to change their activity. This is mode of passion. Mode of goodness, result does not really affect. It is the activity that gives the satisfaction, and the person is happy doing that. Now, as a sadhaka, of course, we are supposed to follow the instructions of Special Master, no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, we are given service, or we take a service which is a little bit tuned to our nature. Some part of it we have to do it nonetheless, if it is identifying with our nature or not, because we have to get over the whims of the mind. But whatever it is, one thing that we should do in bhakti, we should avoid doing in bhakti yoga or in our practice of bhakti, is give up on things. If I have taken something, unless the authority says it's not necessary for you to continue now, until then we should not give up. You can go back and clarify, have discussion, but don't come up with this thought, okay, I should do something else now because this is done. This is what I don't like or like. This is somewhere working on the mode of passion platform. Mode of goodness, steadiness. And in Krishna consciousness, nothing can grow without steadiness. Usahan, Nishayat, Dhairyat. Dhairyat. Patience is needed. Confidence is needed that Krishna will protect. And that is what the mode of goodness behavior is. We stick to it, we do it. That's the point. Here we'll continue. We'll discuss more tomorrow. Today I want to just read something to set a foundation here. And tomorrow onwards, there'll be more discussion about the activities under the modes, the destination of a person for whom this mode is predominant, etc., etc. Until then, have a wonderful day ahead. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Tomorrow we begin our